Ever just kind of zone out on a long drive? You're like miles down the road. You realize, whoa, I've been on autopilot this whole time.
It's like our brains just take over, right?
It's wild. Or I don't know if you've ever had this happen.
Uh,
You catch yourself humming along to a song, like a song you haven't heard in years.
yeah.
And you're like, where did that even come from?
Our brains are incredible like that. They're these powerful computers always running in the background, even when we're not totally conscious of what's going on. Like, it makes you wonder what else is going on under the surface, you know?
Exactly. And that's actually a perfect segue into today's deep dive. We're diving into the world of the subconscious. We'll be exploring this idea with Andrew Matthews in his book, Being Happy.
Being happy is a really fascinating look at how our subconscious minds shape so much of our lives, often without us even realizing it.
So to fully grasp what we're talking about here, we kind of have to understand this concept of the subconscious.
Right, because it's easy to go through life thinking that we're in control of our thoughts and actions.
Yeah, like we're making conscious decisions all the time.
But then Matthews throws us this curveball. He compares the mind to an iceberg.
An iceberg. Okay, I like where this is going.
So the tip of the iceberg, that little bit we see above the water, that's our conscious awareness.
Got it. So what we're thinking about right now, what we're aware of in this moment.
Exactly. But the real game changer, the massive chunk of ice hidden beneath the surface, that's our subconscious.
Wow. Okay. So we're talking about a whole lot going on beneath the surface.
And that's where Matthew says things get really interesting. He argues that our subconscious operates based on patterns.
Patterns. Okay. So what do we mean by patterns, like in this context?
Basically, think of them as these ingrained beliefs and habits that we've picked up over the years.
So things from our past, our experiences, our upbringing, all that stuff.
Exactly. And these patterns, they become like these default settings in our subconscious. They influence how we think, how we feel, how we react to the world around us.
Okay, so these subconscious patterns, they're basically running the show in a lot of ways.
In a way, yeah. And sometimes those patterns are helpful, but other times they can hold us back without us even realizing it. Matthews uses this great example in the book, this guy named David.
Okay, what about David?
Well, David was chronically late, like late for everything. Tennis matches, meetings, you name it. Always had a reason, of course.
Yeah, we all know a David, right?
Yeah.
Always running behind.
But here's the thing. Matthews suggests that David's lateness wasn't just bad time management. He argues that it was actually driven by this underlying subconscious belief.
This is getting good. I can already see where this is going. So David's subconscious was making him late. How?
Well, it all comes down to this idea of a subconscious program, right? Matthews says that David had this inner voice constantly telling him he was behind, that he didn't have enough time, like it was ingrained in him. So he'd subconsciously sabotage himself by running late.
So it wasn't intentional. It was this subconscious pattern playing out in his life, and this running late pattern. That's just one example of how these hidden programs can show up, right?
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating is that Matthews doesn't stop at just everyday examples like David's. He goes deeper into how these subconscious patterns can manifest in much bigger ways in our lives.
So these patterns, they're like running in the background of our lives, right? They're influencing our actions, and we might not even realize it. And these patterns, they can go way beyond just being late, right? I mean, Matthews talks about a bunch of different types.
Oh, yeah, he does. For example, one that he calls out is the drama pattern.
The drama pattern?
Yeah. You know those people, those folks who always seem to have something dramatic going on in their lives.
Oh, absolutely. Every
E-
time you ask, how are you know you're in for a 10-minute saga.
Exactly. And while it might seem like they just love to tell a good story, Matthews suggests there's often a deeper reason. Like for some people, this constant chaos, it actually satisfies a subconscious need.
A need for drama.
Well, it can be a need for excitement or attention or even a strange kind of familiarity. You know, it's like their subconscious equates drama with being alive.
Interesting. So it's not just about being a drama queen or a drama king. It's more nuanced than that.
Much more, it's about understanding that this whole pattern, this drama pattern, it might stem from a subconscious desire to feel something, like to feel validated or even to avoid facing deeper emotional water.
That's pretty insightful. It's like the drama, even if it's negative, becomes a comfort zone in a way.
Exactly. And speaking of comfort zones, Matthews also talks about the accident pattern.
The accident pattern. Okay, tell me more.
You know those people who always seem to be tripping, spilling things, bumping into things, almost like they're a walking magnet for mishaps.
Well, I've definitely known a few of those. I always feel bad for them, but yeah, it can be kind of comically predictable.
Right, and Matthews dives into this idea that this too could be linked to subconscious programming. He says it often comes from a belief system that reinforces being clumsy or accident prone.
So it's like subconsciously they're almost expecting those accidents to happen.
In a way, yes, because their subconscious might be subtly influencing their movements and perceptions, making them more susceptible to these mishaps. It's a fascinating example of how our beliefs can actually shape our reality.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. So we've got the drama pattern, the accident pattern. What else? What other patterns are we talking about here?
Well, Matthews also talks about the sickness pattern. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to get sick at the worst possible times? Like right before a big presentation or a long-awaited vacation?
Oh, for sure. Like their body picks the worst time to stage a revolt.
No.
But are you saying there might be a subconscious reason for that too?
Well, Matthew suggests there might be. He points out that for some people, getting sick can actually be a way of avoiding uncomfortable situations or emotions. Like their subconscious is trying to protect them in a way
Protect them from what?
from potential failure or disappointment. Like it's almost like calling in sick to life, even if they don't consciously realize it. And often these patterns are tied to deeper fears or insecurities. Like let's say someone constantly gets sick before a big opportunity at work. They might have a subconscious fear of success, or maybe even a fear of the changes that success might bring.
That's deep. So we're talking about some pretty heavy stuff here. It's like these subconscious patterns can really hold us back in some pretty significant ways.
Mm.
So Matthews doesn't just drop this knowledge bomb on us and walk away, does he? I mean, there's got to be something we can do about it, right? Well, I was going to say, I'm starting to feel a little doomed over here. Like, are we just stuck with these patterns?
He doesn't leave us hanging, thankfully. Because you're right, it can feel kind of overwhelming to think about these subconscious patterns running the show.
Yeah. So what does Matthews suggest we DO about it?
Well, he makes a really powerful point. He says simply becoming aware of these patterns is a huge Rage A first step.
Like that saying, knowing is half the battle.
Exactly. Because when we shine a light on these subconscious programs, when we bring them to the surface, we can start to understand how they might be influencing us.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually do that? How do we become more aware of something that's, well, subconscious?
Well, it starts with paying attention, noticing those recurring themes in your life, those situations where you always seem to react the same way.
So like if I'm always getting sick before a big presentation.
Exactly. That's your cue to pause and say, okay, what's going on here? Instead of just accepting it as, oh, this is just what happens, start questioning it.
Question it. Okay, what else?
Matthews also emphasizes the importance of taking responsibility, and he puts it beautifully, actually. He says, life changes when WE change.
I love that. It's empowering, right? It's not about blaming our past, our upbringing, our subconscious. It's about recognizing that we have the power to choose differently.
Exactly. And that's key, because once we're aware of these patterns, we can start making different choices, even if they're just small steps at first. Like, let's say you recognize the sickness pattern in yourself. Next time you feel that telltale scratch in your throat before a big event.
Instead of assuming I'm getting sick.
Exactly. Instead of immediately going into that, oh no, here we go again mode, you can pause, take a breath, ask yourself, is there something else going on here? Am I maybe feeling anxious about this presentation?
That's such a good point. It's about becoming more conscious of our reactions and questioning whether they're truly serving us.
Precisely. And maybe, just maybe, that pause, that moment of awareness, will give you enough space to choose a different response.
And over time, those small shifts in awareness can lead to big changes.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of this whole journey, isn't it? We can rewrite our own scripts.
You know, this whole conversation has really got me thinking. It's like we're all walking around with these invisible scripts running in the background. And sometimes we get so caught up in the story that we forget. We have the power to change it. We have the power to choose a different ending.
I love that. Choosing a different ending. And that's what Andrew Matthews reminds us. And like being happy, we're not just puppets to our subconscious. We have agency. We have the power to choose happiness.
That's a great note to end on. You know, it's been fascinating to dive deep into the world of subconscious patterns with you.
It really has. And the best part is this is just the beginning of the exploration, right?
Absolutely. Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive today. But before we go, we want to leave you with something to ponder. What recurring patterns have you noticed in your own life? And how might understanding them, as Matthews suggests, help you create more happiness in your everyday life? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.